Hello, my name is Petra Gemeinboeck, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be part of this symposium, even though I'm sorry that I can't join you in person. I look forward to sharing my art-led research practice with you today and how it explores the aesthetic potential of modern human entanglements between human bodies and machine artifacts. Also, a quick heads up that this is a re-recording of my keynote lecture. We had some technical issues during the first half of my original presentation, with many of my slides not being displayed properly. And I'll be turning off my camera for most of the slides so you can focus on the content. Thanks for your understanding, and let's dive in. Our practice emerges from an experimental artistic process and responds to current visions of how we imagine and materialize our relationships with machines, particularly social robots. I believe we find ourselves at a critical juncture where robots are poised to transform our society within the next decade, reshaping how we work, learn, receive care, and socialize. Yet the visions driving this socio-technical future are deeply troubling. Dominant approaches in robotics continue to be anchored in a Cartesian divide between subjects and objects, where robots are seen as mechanical objects that must be made to appear and behave like humans, to become social subjects and participate in social scenarios. As I will show, our practice proposes an alternative framework, one that involves a fundamental ontological shift from machines mirroring humans to exploring how we can become with machines through difference in relation. To illustrate my concern, let me show you a video featuring the humanoid robot NeoBeta developed by 1X. Its purpose is to showcase Neo and how it can perform tasks that mimic human movements, such as walking, gesturing, and interacting with objects. I now play the video again to offer my own narrative. What I see here is a young blonde woman looking up at a man-shaped figure that initially appears to serve her, but then commandingly waves its mechanical hands to gesture her back in front of the camera. The woman is then prompted to hug her mechanical companion, as if we, women, need more manhandling, now automated and endlessly supplied fresh off the production line. Before I delve further into this matter, let me give you a brief overview of the remainder of my talk. I'll begin by introducing current visions of our relationships with robots, which will bring us to the crucial distinction of reflection versus diffraction. I'll then introduce our Machine Movement Lab project, which harnesses movement to reimagine our relationships with abstract machine-like robots. And next, I'll look at performance making as a diffractive tool and how we employed this methodology in the making of our latest performance installation, Alloyed Bodies. And in the final section, I'll discuss my human-robot experience framework and how it choreographs problems rather than offering simplistic mechanical solutions. The prevalent drive to mask difference through superficial mirrorings reveals deep assumptions about what constitutes social relationships and who gets to participate. This representationalist approach not only limits what robots can be, but also constrains the kinds of relationships we might have with them. More concerning yet, it perpetuates conservative narratives and exclusive hegemonic politics oriented toward wealthy societies, while dismissing the matterings of both less privileged humans and non-human participants. The boundaries we draw between humans and machines through these design practices materially determine who and what matters, which bodies get to participate in our socio-technical future, and how. I argue that by expanding our imagination of what a social robot could be, we can have more diverse and inclusive relationships between humans and robots. There's an escape route from this representationalist trap. Actually, I'm confident that there are many possible pathways to counter representationalism, but the one I'll share with you today involves feminist theorist Karen Barat's concept of diffraction as both a theoretical lens and methodological tool that attends to the relational nature of difference. Rather than reflection, which only produces copies or mirrors, diffraction traces how differences materially matter, how they generate new patterns and possibilities through their interference. In physics, when waves meet, they don't simply reflect or bounce off each other, they combine to form new composite patterns. Similarly, in human-machine encounters, differences between bodies and things can generate productive new configurations and more than human meanings. Diffraction thus gives us a way to attend to these emerging patterns and to explore how they trace the effects of difference rather than trying to mask or overcome them. Rather than seeing machines as mechanical objects that need human-like qualities to become social subjects, what if we looked at subjects and objects as emerging through their material encounters? This is what Karen Barat calls interaction. It's another important theoretical lens for us, as it fundamentally reframes how we understand agency. Not as a property that can be given to or programmed into robots, but as something enacted through the material encounter itself. We see this more than human agency enacted in the studio each time when dancers become entangled with the cube artifacts. Neither remains unchanged. They emerge and transform through their material interactions. Before I dive deeper into our methodological development, I'd like to share a glimpse of what this alternative approach looks like in action. I'll show an excerpt from one of our performance works called Dancing with the Non-Human. It's a 20-minute improvisational performance involving 2 dancers, 2 robot costumes, and 1 cube robot. The performance is structured through an underlying score that unfolds through a series of choreographic motifs that have emerged from our studio experiments and playfully explore the performative enactment of subject-object boundaries. I'll talk a bit more about that later. I founded the Machine Movement Lab with Rob Saunders in 2015. The transdisciplinary project proposes a fundamental ontological shift for human-robot interaction, from designing for an encounter between two allegedly separate pre-existing agents to designing with the encounter itself, through which subjects and objects emerge and co-constitute each other through material interactions. To do this, we began to explore how movement and its dynamic qualities can propel meaning-making between radically asymmetric embodiments by probing into the richness of human-non-human entanglings. This involved asking dance artists to inhabit, wear, or extend themselves into a wide variety of materials and shapes, to investigate their unique performative relational potential. Through this process, we discovered how simple geometric shapes, when activated through movement dynamics, can produce surprisingly rich relational possibilities without relying on human-like features. You may be familiar with the somewhat similar concept presented in Oskar Schlemmer's Triadic Ballet, which uses geometric costumes to transform the dancers' bodies. Schlemmer's work could also be seen as a kind of becoming machine, however our approach differs fundamentally. Rather than using costumes to transform the human body, we employ them as interfaces for performative material dialogues with other than human embodiments. In the end, we chose the cube shape for building our first robotic prototype because of its plain omnidirectional geometry and how it radically differs from many organic forms with their inherent hierarchies of front, back, head, and limbs. The juxtaposition between this regular form and dynamic movement qualities opens up possibilities for transformation and meaning-making that arise through rather than despite its otherness. From these early explorations emerged our performative body mapping methodology, which employs variable costumes that stand in for a robot in the making. To kinesthetically feel into this other-than-human body and its unique material relational affordances, our dance collaborators have developed contact improvisation techniques to extend into and become entangled with these abstract artifacts. This performer costume entanglement generates hybrid motion patterns that inform both our robot design and machine learning processes. Importantly, the goal isn't to make robots move like humans, but to explore new, more than human movement dynamics and intermeshing of human and machines' very different ways of being. While the robot learns from these hybrid movement patterns, its learning to improvise movements is fundamentally grounded in its own unique machine embodiment. The machine learning process thus brings together explorations of intrinsic movement capabilities, motion capture data from our performer costume entanglements, and movement analysis. This combination enables the robot to generate more than machine movements within the constraints and possibilities of its cubic form and mechanical makeup. The approach ensures the robot's improvisational capabilities emerge from its specific machine-like morphology, while opening up new possibilities for meaning-making that arise through the superposition of human and machine movement characteristics. In this slide, I'll talk a bit more about our human capacity to bodily attune to non-human bodies and how this propels our participation in modern human relationships. Haraway's concept of becoming with is central to our understanding of transcorporeal attunement and empathy. It proposes that, and I quote, "the partners do not precede their relating. All that is the fruit of becoming with." End of quote. This understanding of subjects and objects as emerging through their material encounters rather than pre-existing their relating materializes in our process as what I termed bodying thinging. Bodying thinging is a continuous process of mutual transformation where neither body nor thing remains unchanged, but rather they co-constitute each other through their material enmeshing. Bodying thinging as a pattern traces how subjects and objects emerge through the entangled material encounters, drawing on Manning and Masumi's notion of bodying as movement that bodies forth rather than what a body does, and Heidegger's concept of thinging, which untethers the thing from an object's utility. Bodies are always already relational and porous, ready to being reconfigured. And when the dancers learn to listen to and reconfigure themselves to become with the cube, new hybrid configurations emerge, the body becoming more thing and the thing becoming more body, undoing and redoing each other. Bodying thinging thus traces the transcorporeal attunement that occurs through the continuous differentiating and as dancers and artifacts entangle and interact. Building on our PBM methodology, relational body mapping, RBM, expands our practice to performance making, framed through a post-human dramaturgy. It investigates how multiple bodies and things, human performers, cube costumes, and robotic artifacts generate complex interference patterns through their modern human entanglements. In our studio practice, we have witnessed 4 significant patterns that trace the effects of subjects and objects co-constituting each other. First, we observed the pattern of becoming with, where dancers corporeally extend into or fold around the cube costume, developing an intimate material dialogue through points of contact, weight sharing, and material attunement. The becoming hybrid pattern manifests as performers dwell along the threshold between subject and object. Here the boundary itself becomes a space for exploration, a zone where hybrid configurations and new patterns emerge through blurring the body-thing boundary. In becoming tentacular, we witness how these hybrid entities begin actively reaching toward each other, growing appendages and forming new connections across multiple bodies and things, sometimes only metaphorically and sometimes materially. Finally, becoming world shows how these alloyed bodies engage in a dynamic world-making, weaving through networks of relations and generating tectonic landscapes through their collective material negotiations. The performance-focused methodology demonstrates how performance making can serve as a laboratory for exploring new human-robot configurations. We witness how bodies and things come into shifting alignments, propelling hybrid alliances that challenge traditional subject-object boundaries. To give you a better sense of these shifting alignments and modern human alliances, I'd like to show you some excerpts from our latest work, Alloyed Bodies. This will also offer a closer look at how our performance installations are shaped by these interference patterns. Alloyed Bodies is a 1-hour semi-structured improvisational performance installation featuring 3 dancers, 3 cube costumes, and 1 cube robot. The performance progresses through 6 scenarios of encounter, each serving as a lens to explore varying degrees of entanglement as we experiment with the porosity of subject-object boundaries. It begins with a familiar perspective, with separate bodies and objects. Our human performers enter small cubic world, box world. Box world evolves into threshold, creating a space between bodies and objects that can be stretched, opened, lingered in, and explored. Concurrent gradually evolves a fluid pattern of geometric forms. This scene often elicits smiles from the audience as it becomes difficult to keep track of which one is the robot. Then the cubes become tentacular, with extensions unfurling and reaching toward, only to turn the stage into a jumble of bodies and things in kuddle-muddle, rendering boundaries increasingly fluid. The performance culminates in modern human world-making, with dancers and cubes co-creating a dynamic lattice of alloyed bodies and things, extending each other. A generative soundscape by Adam Nash acts as another modern human performer. The final stage invites audiences to participate, to mingle with human and non-human performers, and to explore this playful tangle from within. Performance making here offers unique ways to involve potential future stakeholders in immersive experiences and engage in transcorporeal perspective taking to gain embodied insights into novel robot designs. I've mentioned designing with a few times and would like to delve into this term a bit further. Designing with the encounter rather than for a future encounter positions us in the middle of the ongoing reconfigurings of the world, no longer distant to or outside of its metrics and the conditions they arise from. It opens up a more horizontal playground where designers, performers, and materials become co-participants in exploring emergent possibilities. Instead of seeking to control outcomes, designing with requires staying open to what bodies and things might become together, while carefully attending to how boundaries between subjects and objects are enacted through our design practices. I refer to this rethinking of human-robot relations as the Human-Robot Experience Framework, or short HRX, which provides a lens for reconceptualizing how we understand and design these relationships. In our performance-making practice, HRX manifests through what choreographer Bojana Cvejic calls choreographing problems, and that is creating situations that provoke new forms of bodily material attunement rather than prescribing solutions. Doing human-robot interaction the diffractive way is thus about posing problems by attending to difference in relation. In the following slides, and to conclude this talk, I'll outline some key orientations that embody this ontological shift. The first guiding principle of HRX is that agency is enacted in between, rather than a given property. HRX attends to interference patterns that emerge through bodily material interactions between human and artifact embodiments. Understanding agency as an ongoing enactment challenges power structures that rely on binaries like subjects and objects. Secondly, it is about designing with the encounter, along with all its material participants. It involves positioning designers within the diffraction pattern, which requires a fundamental shift from seeking control to actively participating in ongoing emergent reconfigurations. Enacting co-worlding follows Stacy Alamo's notion that bodies are always already more than human. HRX seeks to enact co-worlding through resonance patterns that open up hybrid and tentacular capacities in both bodies and things. The fourth principle relates to machine learning. Doing AI diffractively attends to machines' unique embodiment and capacities, and embraces hybridity and multiplicity. And finally, cultivating a transcorporeal empathy is about developing a more horizontal playground for enacting human-machine relationships. It requires us to get entangled, become with, and resonate with things. In HRX, cultivating transcorporeal empathy is about embodied encounters with bodies extending toward and resonating with the machine's otherness, while machine artifacts co-shape the experience through their unique other-than-human material relational qualities. So in summary, our practice explores how performance making can serve as a diffractive tool for reimagining human-machine relationships, promoting a more horizontal, more than human playground where social agency emerges through difference rather than sameness. The political potential of this diffractive practice lies in its capacity to open up ontological boundaries between subjects and objects to bodily material reconfiguration, giving rise to an ethics of co-worlding. This entangled ontological dramaturgy seeks to open up questions not only about what robots could be, but also about how we might attune to and resonate with the modern human world that we are always already part of, by seeking difference in relation. Thank you for watching my presentation. If you'd like to know more about this project, please visit our website, machinemovementlab.net. Goodbye and take care.